Welcome back to another video, and in this video we're going to be continuing on with our AppKit tutorial series for macOS development, and in this particular video we're going to be taking a look at how we can create radio buttons in AppKit. Now, radio buttons are generally, in fact they are created using an NS button. So they're a type of button just like a checkbox. Now, in order to create a radio button, there are a few things that have to be true. First, the radio buttons, in order for them to work properly, have to be in the same subview as each other. So, in our example today, we have two radio buttons. Each of those radio buttons has to be in the same subview as each other. That way, AppKit is able to keep track of them in the same super view, I should say. So they have to be in the same super view. Second, radio buttons must have the same action method. So they can't both be nil or anything like that. There has to be an action method, and they both have to be they both have to be the same selector pointing to the same method. All right? So, with that being said, let's take a look at what we have to start with. So, to start with, I have an NS text field that is configured to be a label. And then I have two NS buttons. They are configured to be a normal push button with a title, target, and action. They are configured to be, these three controls are centered vertically. So the first radio button is exactly centered in the center of our view vertically. And then the second radio button is beneath that, and the label is above our first radio button. They are aligned along the leading edge of our view, but the label is 25 points from the leading edge, whereas the radio buttons are 50 points from the leading edge. And or rather, the buttons, I should say, not radio buttons, because they're not radio buttons yet. If we run our code and we see what we have, this is what we're working with. So we have a label that asks us which order we're part of, and then we have two buttons. These two buttons are they have the respective titles of Jedi and Sith. However, push buttons aren't that great of a choice here to use. So a radio button for each of these choices would work much better. All right, so let's go ahead and go back into our code. And the first thing that we're going to do is change the initializer of our buttons. So instead of title, we want radio button with title. Let's go ahead and do that. We want radio button with title. Alright, let's do the same thing with our other radio button. Or our other button, I should say. So instead of title, radio button with title. Save that. And at this point, we're good to go. So let's go ahead and save this and then run it. we have a successful build. So we have our label, and then we have our radio buttons. The first radio button is Jedi. We can select Sith, and now Jedi is not selected. Sith is no longer selected, but Jedi is, and all of that sort of stuff. So that is pretty much how we can convert a normal push button to a radio button, by simply changing the parameter title or the parameter label in our initializer to have it call a different one. Now, that's not all that I want to cover today, because that would make a very, very quick and uninteresting video, right? So remember how I said that we need to have each radio button we need to make sure that each radio button has the same action, has the same selector pointing to the same method? Well, using that method is how we can determine which radio button is currently turned on and which one's off, right? Yeah, at the moment that it's clicked, and then run some code accordingly. Now, usually, the most efficient way of determining our which radio button we are working with, by determining which radio button was clicked, we use what's called a tag. Now, a tag is a simple integer that is used to uniquely identify each radio button that is associating itself with that action method that we assign it. Now, you can see up above our controller here, I have an enum. And this enum is called force order. It has an associated value of an integer. So each case has an integer associated with it. You can see Jedi is a 1 and Sith is 2. All right, that's important. You don't have to use an enum, but I prefer to do that because of the fact that it makes it just slightly easier to have all of our potential tag values in one place. So let's go back down to our configure method here. And inside of configure, we can see that we're enabling programmatic constraints and then adding everything as a subview to the view. Right, so pretty simple code that we've already done before many times, but between these two sections of our configure method, we need to set the tag for both of our radio buttons. So to do this, we need to set the tag property. So it'll be something like this: Jedi btn dot tag equals force order dot raw value. And then again, we can do the same thing for our Sith radio button. So Sith btn dot tag equals force order dot Sith dot raw value. I see. I didn't say Jedi.raw value here. My apologies. I should have done that. There we go. Force order.jedi.raw value, and then force order.sith.raw value for our Sith radio button. Okay, it appears so let's try that again. Jedi button dot tag equals force order dot Jedi dot raw value, and then Sith btn dot tag dot or equals force order dot Sith dot raw value, like that. Okay, now let's say we want to change the background color of the view of our Windows view when to a different color when we select a different radio button. Kind of simulate a light and dark mode radio button situation there, but that's kind of the point here. So the first thing we want to do is determine which button is actually pressed. So we'll say let tag equals button dot tag, not target, dot tag. So now we have an integer storing the tag of the button that triggered this method. We can say switch tag, and we'll say case 1 will do something, case 2 again will do something, and then default we'll say view.layer.background color equals nscolor.systemfill.cg color. Pretty simple. Now, to take care of our Jedi case for our tag, we will say if button dot state dot actually let's put the state of our button as well in its own constant. So let state equals button dot state we'll say if state equals dot on. So what we're saying here is if the button that triggered this this action has a tag of 0, or rather a tag of 1, we know it's the Jedi radio button. So we are going to set the background color to blue. So view dot layer dot background color equals ns color dot system blue dot cg color. All right. Inversely, if our case is 2, we know it's the Sith radio button. So here, we're going to say view.layer.background color equals ns_color.system_red.cg color, because the Sith are well known for their red lightsabers, right? So let's make sure there's no errors here. Okay, we have an error here somewhere. Let's make sure that there's no optional stuff going on here that we're missing. Ah, there is. So let's make sure that's attached. Okay. Okay, we should be okay. Good, we're all right. Let's go into my view did load and make sure that we guarantee we get a layer using the once layer Boolean property here. We'll say view once layer equals true. Make sure that we get a layer that we can work with. So save and run your code now. You can see we get a successful build and we get our label and 2 radio buttons. The background is not set to a default value, at least not from the action method. It's just its normal background color. Now, if we select, say, Jedi, it'll turn blue. If it's Sith, it'll turn red. Jedi, back to blue. Sith, back to red. All right, so that pretty much does it for this video on radio buttons in AppKit. Thank you all so very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.